Hello everyone and welcome to Java lesson number 22. Today we will talk about references in Java. Open up your Eclipse program, then you can create a new Java project. We will name it lesson 22. Like we always do, you can go to your package after you create it and create a new class. The main class, and you can add inside of it the main method. You can also add a new class named flower. Let's create our flower and we will work on it. Flower. What does a flower need? A flower needs a name, and flower also needs a growth. So here it is important. Name is a reference. And it is a reference towards an object. So let's move on. We'll explain everything. Then we will create our constructor, public flower. And inside our constructor we will say this name, and we will give it the value that we want, and we will set the growth that it begins always at the 0 value. Constructor, the constructor gives a name at the flower the moment he is being called. We can also create a toString method, but we will create here a public one, a public method water, like we had before. I don't even know if we need it, but yeah, we'll write it anyway. This increases the value of growth by 1, but we can also create a getter to get the growth. You can also do it automatically. Return growth. Exactly. Now we have our class flower. We have our flower here. Then we can go to our main method. Now, let's go to the theory. What is a reference? In Java, a reference is a type category. Reference types include classes, interfaces, arrays, enums. We will see later on what an enum is, and annotations. The same goes to annotations. Java is a pass-by-value language, but references are themselves a kind of a value. This means that when you pass a reference type to a method, that method has access to the data that can change it. And Java has two types of memory. Java has a stack memory and a heap memory. The stack memory in Java is used for static memory allocation and the execution of a thread. It contains primitive values that are specific to a method and references to objects that are in a heap. Another space to store things. Access to this memory is in last in first out order. If you know some things about these algorithms. To put it even more simply, the memory is like following. The stack memory begins from 0, 0, 0. Let's also write it for you. Stack memory. It begins always with at 000 and ends at FF. This is hexadecimal number. You can Google what it is. It is a number with a base of 16. And two things in Java are responsible for the memory. The heap, it is responsible for objects. For example, if I write flower, then space is being held inside of the heap. Heap is being reserved. And the stack memory. The stack memory is responsible for the local variables. For example, variables. For example, if I write new flower, then space, no wait, let's make it even easier. For the local variables, and also you can say the references, and also the prime data types. And we can also see it in action. This will be easier for you. If we write, for example, private static, and then we call flower type reference, you can watch it out. This thing that I will write here, I am a reference. So this is a reference here. A reference is being sorry, I did write it inside the main method. Here, a reference, as you can see in Eclipse, is being written in light blue and also in italic, and it is stored inside the stack memory. And what it does, it points out the object of the type flower that is being created in the heap memory. This is all it does. Let's go further. We can use it. I am a reference and create and give it the value of a new object, a new flower object, which we will name flower. And now I have a reference inside of the stack memory, which point out to this specific object, which is located inside the heap memory. We can also call it. And now I don't have the toString method. I don't have the toString method inside my flower class. I didn't write it. And if I press run, the thing I get here is the place of the object inside my memory. Here it says that inside this package, an object from the type flower is at this memory, at this place inside the memory. And that's why we need the toString method in order to change that in what we like if we write, for example, flower, and then we say flower, and we give it the value of rose, this will be the name, then the flower here is a reference, or in C++ it is being called pointer, for those of you that have already learned C++, and it is a reference to an object of flower, of type flower. And if I call it like I did above with the other reference, then you can see that I get another place inside the memory. And as you can see an F here, you can see an E here. This is because it is a hexadecimal number. And as I said to you before, in order to take a normal string value, you need to use the toString method, as we already learned. And before I end up this lesson, I will also tell you a little bit of theory here. For example, if we have if we want to call a method, this method here, let's make a method here. If we want to call this method, it has a value here. This method is being located to the stack on the bottom place. You can imagine the bottom place of stack. A nice way to do it would be here. Let's do it that way. I'm not really good at painting, but let's try it. So imagine that this is here is the stack, S stack. If I have a method m1 and I call it, it goes here at the bottom of the stack, along with the integer or string, so the data types that it has, the variables that it has. And if I call another one, it goes here, and the third one, it goes here. And as I said, it has the variables, it has it contains also references like the one we have, the growth one, for example. And these references, imagine that we have here, let's say another color here, this is the heap memory. Imagine that here we have an object flower with these two variables, the variable string name and the variable int growth. This is inside here, and we have a reference in our stack. A reference, you can imagine that we have this, I am a reference. This is inside the stack, and the object is inside the heap. So the reference is pointing into the object in the heap memory, and this is why we have a value of reference, for example. And the moment that it ceases to exist, that it doesn't have any anything to do anymore, it is being erased for the memory here. And the moment that the reference is erased from here, these two values are candidates for garbage collection. You can Google what a garbage collection in Java is. It is an automatically procedure that is being that's being done from your operating system, and then the moment that the other method here ceases to exist, and this one, and at some point you have the main method here. As I told you before, I'm not really good at painting. I know that it is also a lot to think, but these are the references. And let's say that you have a reference here, this one, and you accidentally lose it. This reference points out into the heap memory where the value of reference of this name is. Let's save it and try to call it. You can see here the null value. Can you imagine why is that happening? Because as you can see, we define here this object, and we give it no value. There's no value that we give to this reference here. And as we said before, if it was an integer, it would take the value of 0. But it is an object, and objects have the start value of null. The null is the 0 of the objects. And now we call it without first to define it here. Now if we do it again, now we get the memory space. This was it for today. It was a little break for our course in order to learn some basics from Java's memory for the stack and the heap. In the next lesson we will talk about the array list, and after that we will jump into the inheritance in Java, which is a really important lesson in Java in order to really understand what object-oriented programming is. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them below in the comment section, or you can or feel free to send me a message. Thank you all for watching.